Okay guys, we're down here in the workshop today, and what we're going to show you is we're going to unbox and build the brand new Surron Ultra B electric dirt bike. Show you what's in the box, how to put it all together. I've never built one of these myself, so hopefully it'll show you just how easy this is and what you're going to need to do this for yourself at home when your brand new Surron Ultra B turns up on your doorstep. Right, so first thing we need to do to get into the box here is you'll see we've got some straps holding the whole thing together. So I'll cut these off and then we'll open up the box, we'll see what falls out. Okay, so you can see once you've got all the box off, all the packaging, this is essentially what you'll have. You'll also find you've got your front mudguard here. Then you'll have 4 boxes in total. So this one here will contain your owner's manual as well as a couple of other parts like chain guard, etc. In this box here, you've got your Ultra B charger, or fast charger I should say. Then in this white box here, you've got your optional rear view mirrors. You don't have to use these because it's not exactly a street legal bike, but you can also put them on if you like. And then finally, in the biggest box of all, you've got your front wheel. So we'll set all those aside for now because we don't need those immediately, because the first step we do here is we are actually going to assemble and install the handlebar assembly. So let's get into that. So now the first step that we're going to do is we're going to remove these 2 pieces out of the top of the stem, or where the handlebar sits, so that we can actually start to get that all together. So we'll just loosen off these Allen bolts here. And with those, we'll just set them aside for now until we need them later on to fasten the handlebar down in its place. All right, now one step you're going to have to do before you can put everything onto the handlebar is this switch assembly on the left-hand side of the handlebar will be tightened down already, which doesn't give you enough sort of slack to be able to fit the right-hand stuff on. So you'll need to get an Allen wrench and actually loosen this section off first so that it's able to move. Then that will give you enough wiggle room to then get your switch assembly for the right-hand side and actually just get that on there. Now, for the time being, just remember, we are just mounting this stuff on the handlebar loose. We'll tighten it down once the handlebars are mounted properly. All right, so now that we've got the right-hand switch as well as the throttle mounted just loosely on the handlebar, we can go ahead and re-tighten down this part of the handlebar, and then after that, we'll mount the brake levers. So to do this, we're gonna grab these 2 pieces that we took off before, and we'll just put them back on. You wanna just tighten them. Not too tight just yet, because we still need to position our handlebars. And now once you've tightened them down to about there, we can then go ahead and start to position our handlebars. Now to properly center these handlebars, you'll notice we've got some notches marked on here, here, and also here. So what you want to do first of all is line up this larger notch here with where the brake in the clamps are. And then also you want to position the handlebars so you've got 3 notches either side here, but you can see we're really only getting one of them showing out. We just want to make sure that that is even before we go ahead and tighten this all down, which that's looking pretty good. Now the other thing to remember when tightening this down is tighten one side and then tighten the other so that you get a nice even pressure and you're not over tightening one side. So I'll tighten that a little bit, tighten the next one down, and then I'll repeat that on the other side here and this one. And just repeat that until these are nice and firm, and then we can continue. All right, now to install the brake levers, which is the next step that we're gonna do, I'm actually gonna pull out this box here, the medium-ish sized box, because in here is a part that we're gonna need. Well, I'll go through everything you've got in here. So you'll find your chain guard in here. There's also this bag here, which you'll find has the part that I'm gonna use, because your brake levers, the ones that are already on here, have the mounts to put your rear view mirrors on. For today's build, I'm not gonna chuck them on there because we want it to set up more like an MX setup. So in here, we've actually got the other side to the brake mounts that don't take the mirrors. So we're gonna swap those ones out. You've also then got a blanking plate as well. So if you do want to completely remove this entire assembly on the back here, with your indicators and tail light, you can go ahead and remove that. And then this blanking plate that's in here actually then goes on the bottom and replaces the mount that whole assembly is attached to. You've got your certificate of conformity for the EU in this box. as well as you have, looks like an owner's manual or something in here. Yep, owner's manual, spots to put your tools and stuff like that as well. Then what else have we got? Our hand guards that mount off the handlebars, as well as you've got a really, really big Allen wrench and a couple of side reflectors. So we'll put that stuff to the side for now, and we'll continue with installing the brake levers. Okay, so now to put these brake levers on, I'm gonna remove this back part of where the brake mount is. So just with an Allen wrench, let's undo these. We're gonna completely replace this portion, which is designed to have the rear view mirrors mounted in it, with this blanked off version. So mount this up to your handlebar as such. Make sure that the cable is not interfering with anything else down here, like your indicators and such. And we'll just put the bolts through. And again, we can just hand tighten these for the time being until we get everything lined up exactly where we want it, and then we'll tighten them down properly. And so now we're just gonna do the exact same thing on the right hand. Yeah, it's the right hand side brake lever. So we'll remove those mirror mounts and put the blanked out ones on. Now, one thing that you will start to see becomes quite crucial is the way that the throttle, the switch assembly, and the brake need to line up is, you'll see you've got your ready switch here. Now that, when we tighten this down, but we'll also make sure we're paying attention while they're loose, this needs to line up perfectly with this flat section on the throttle there, or else the switch won't activate properly. And then same again also, this brake lever also needs to sit snugly, and it will sort of sit into that recessed section under the ready switch. So I'll put this together and we'll keep it loose, but then as we tighten it down, we'll pay extra attention to making sure that that is all lined up correctly. Now, another thing to be paying attention to as well, on the back of these blanked out mounts, you'll see it does have an arrow with the words up. Just make sure that you are positioning it in the right direction as you're putting that in place. And that goes for both the left and right hand side. Now that I think I've got the switch and also the brake lever, they're in the position and the angle that I like, so I'm gonna go ahead and tighten these two down. So starting off, I'll do the switch assembly first. Just with that Allen wrench, tighten that one point down. Okay, it feels pretty firm. And now with the brake lever, you will notice as well, just like I mentioned on the other one, if you come around to this other side here, you'll see there is a bit of a recess in here that brake lever sits nicely into, nice and snug. Make sure it is located in there before going ahead and completely tightening this down. All right, now the next step is we're gonna tighten down the assembly on the right-hand side of the handlebar. Two things to keep in mind when doing this. First of all, you wanna make sure that your throttle is as far onto the handlebar as it can go so that it's nicely mounted on there. So what I'm gonna do is I will actually position this with this flat section I talked about before being pretty much as vertical as it can go. And then I'll tighten that down. So start by tightening the throttle down, make sure that's in position. Okay, now that we've got that reasonably firm, we then will line up this ready switch. As I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that that is in front of where this flat section is here. Once we're satisfied that that's where we want it, we can go ahead and tighten that part down as well. And then the last one is the brake lever. As I said before, there's this sort of notched out or recessed section there. Make sure it is sitting nicely into there, and then we'll go ahead and tighten that down as well. Now, once we've got both the left and right hand side switches and brake levers all assembled on here, don't stress out too much if they're not completely even. You can go ahead and just loosen them off a little bit and adjust them to exactly how you like them. But just when you do, pay attention to making sure those three portions line up on there, as well as the two on the left-hand side. Now, once you've got the rest of your components mounted on your handlebars, one thing you will notice is this little guy dangling off the bottom of both sides. This is your brake sensor. So what we'll do is we'll go underneath and we'll show you how to install this one. Now, there'll be a couple of things that you notice here. We've got this sort of square-shaped mounting point here. We've also got a bit of a block section there with a hole. So the way that this goes is you've got this little button here that goes up against this block section. This section here goes on that square mounting point, and then the hole that's in the brake sensor is where we'll then mount that with the screw and the washer that we had from before. So we'll go ahead, put this into position, like so, and tighten it down. And then once you've got that one tightened down, just be sure to repeat the brake sensor installation on the left-hand side as well. Right, for the next step, I'm going to loosen off the straps that are holding the bike down onto the pallet, and then we will install the chain guard. All right, now grab the chain guard that was in the box we opened earlier. It's going to mount down here. So what we're going to need to do to start off with is remove these 2 bolts, and then we can put it on there. Right, now the next step we're going to do is install the front mud guard. This is going to go under here. You'll see we've got 4 bolts that we need to remove, and then they will hold the mud guard into the bottom of the forks. All right, now the next thing to keep in mind is when you are removing the bolts, you'll notice you've got 2 washers, one sort of a hat-shaped one and the other one's just a flat washer. These are both going on the underside of your mud guard here. So we put the mud guard into position and feed these bolts up under, and just making sure that those washers feed through the hole in the mud guard. And now we'll just do the same for all 4 and tighten them down. All right, next we're going to install the hand guards onto both the left and right side of the handlebar. So you'll find you've got 2 Allen screws here and here. You remove those 2, and then you've got your 2 holes in your hand guards. Feed them through, and that's how you attach them. So once you've got the first one installed with the bolts firmly tightened, repeat it on the other side of the handlebar. Now the next step we're going to do is install the front wheel. So to do that, we're going to remove the 4 bolts on the block of wood holding the axle in place down there. If you have any friends that can help you, now's the time to invite them around and bribe them with a beer. Now that we've got that out of the box and sitting on the motocross stand, the next thing we want to do is get this axle out. So what I'm going to do is we're going to remove the nut from this side of the axle, and then we're going to remove the 2 bolts either side here to release the clamp, and that'll allow us to pull the axle out. Now with those clamp bolts loosened, you'll see I can actually pull the axle out, and just be sure to not lose the bushings that will go on either side of the wheel. Now with the bushings that you will have pulled out with the axle, you'll notice they have a lip on them here. Now that pushes inside the seal of the bearing on each side and just keeps them in position, so that you can then put your wheel up into into the fork and mount your axle in. Now before I can put the wheel into the forks, I just need to remove the spacer from the brake caliper. So that's this piece here, and you should just be able to pull that out like that. And now we can lift the wheel into place, lining the brake disc into the caliper, and start to feed the axle through. Now the next step that we're going to do is we're going to take the nut that we removed from the axle before. I'm going to tighten that down just so the other end of the axle is sitting flush into the fork. Then we'll tighten down these 2 clamp bolts on each side. Okay. That's pretty good. Now when doing the final tightening down of both the pinch bolts as well as the main axle nuts, the pinch bolts need to be tightened to 12 Newton meters, whereas the axle nut on the end goes up to 60 Newton meters. All right, we're nearly finished the Surron Ultra B build, so the last thing left to do really is I'll show you how to remove the seat. We'll get in there, we'll hook up the battery, and we'll show you how to get it going. All right, next thing, so we're going to grab our key to open up the seat, and so you insert the key down here, give it a little bit of a push on here, and that will release your seat. Once you've got the latch released, just pull the seat backwards, and then you can remove this packaging. Now once you've removed your seat, you can see you've got a bit of a stow spot for a little mini toolkit, and you just need to undo these latches here, and then just lift them forward. That will then release the battery door. Under here is where then you'll find this blue cable here. That just literally pushes in and will click into place. and then remove the orange battery cap here, and that will just press straight on. Once you've done those two things, you can then put this back down, push your levers underneath the little catches that are on here, and tighten them down. To reinstall the seat, you'll see you've got your little notch piece up here, which coincides with that notch on the seat. Slide it onto there, and then just give it a slap, and you're done. Now, once you've got your battery hooked up, one of the things you might... Oh, this seat's not on properly. Someone didn't put the seat back on properly. Okay, now the next thing to do, once you've got your battery hooked up, naturally, is turn the bike on, test that everything works. Just a tip for everyone at home, don't do this unless you've got it up on a stand and the back wheel is actually off the ground. What I'm gonna do is insert the key into the ignition and power the bike on. It'll go through its initial startup and we can see that everything is pretty good to go. Now, before I pull the throttle, you'll see what I do is I actually need to pull in the ready lever, and then that'll allow me to pull on the throttle, and everything seems to be working just great. All right, so that concludes our build of the brand new Surron Ultra B. As you saw, that's the first one I've built, and I thought it was reasonably easy. It uses a minimum amount of tools. If you've got any questions though, just hit us up in the comments down below, or if you want to find out more information about the Surron Ultra B, we'll list those down below in the description. But we'll see you guys in the next video.